Ember, Book 1, Chapter 1 Glossary. Uneven means not flat or smooth. Example, long shadows on the uneven wooden floor. Calloused means hard, thick skin from heavy work. Example, into his large, calloused hands. Smirking means smiling in a nasty, satisfied way. Example, Ratty leaned back in her chair, smirking. Spares means extra parts for repairing machines. Example, pumps broke, no spares, of course. Suit yourself means do what you want, often a little annoyed. Example, suit yourself. Look around. Irritation means anger or annoyance. Example, her eyes shone with irritation and hunger. Deliberate means done slowly and on purpose, carefully planned. Example, each motion deliberate. Tight means here very tense or firmly stretched muscles, stomach, chest, etc. Examples, stomach tight, sweat shining on her skin. Also, her jaw pressed hard, her voice tight but steady. Chapter 1. The air in the saloon theater was warm and heavy, filled with the smell of old beer, sweaty clothes, and sharp smoke from the two small alcohol lamps. Their weak yellow light made long shadows on the uneven wooden floor. Outside, the sky was already dark, hiding the last light of evening. Ember was a tall woman with bright red hair and green eyes that caught every bit of light. She danced on the small stage, her body moving with strong, focused energy. The drums shook the floor and sent vibrations through her feet, legs, and tight muscles. Ratty, the drummer, was a short, thin brunette whose hands moved so fast they were hard to follow. She hit the drums with hard, exact strikes, controlling the rhythm and pushing the dance forward. Ember answered with her body, each movement clear, each turn sharp. Both women moved with a mix of tiredness and skill. Ember spun around, red hair flying, green eyes shining in the dim light. Her muscles were wet with sweat under the lamp's glow. She danced with a strong, almost painful need. They are not looking. They are not looking at me at all, Ember thought, and a cold fear grew in her stomach. She moved her hips slowly and carefully. Her hands slid down her stomach, feeling the strength in her body. Look at the power. Look at the life. This should be worth something, you sad people. Worth more than a can of food. One by one, she removed her clothes, fast and precise. First the old leather vest, then the torn denim shorts which flew across the stage. About a dozen people watched with tired faces and dull eyes. They hardly reacted, like shadows in the weak light. From a dark corner, a rough voice said, "The raiders are coming soon." "The raiders are always coming, Jimmy." "Tell a new story," another voice answered, bored. Ember didn't listen. She saw Ratty look up for a moment, her eyes showing deep exhaustion before she returned to the steady drumming. Each strike ordered the same message: keep dancing. Don't stop. Ember moved to the metal pole in the center of the stage and climbed it easily, her body twisting smoothly. At the top, she held on with one arm and arched her back. Then she slid down close to the floor, stopping just in time, her knees almost touching the wood. She lay on her back and pushed her body upward on her hands and feet, stomach tight, sweat shining on her skin. Her hips moved side to side. With her head stretched back, she looked at the spectators upside down. The move was hard and demanded control, but she did it without mistake. Rising and turning again, her red hair swinging, she tried to hold the room's attention. She was almost naked, the cold floor touching her knees. One more song. One more minute. Then I can rest. Then I can be afraid. The music grew louder. Ratty's drumming became a fast storm of sound, each beat hitting the floor and Ember's body. This was the moment everything depended on. Ember's fingers found the last tie, the final piece of cloth dropped to the dark floor. She stood completely naked, still as stone, arms raised above her head. She held the silence, breathing slowly, feeling the sweat and the tension in her muscles. Then she picked up her clothes and stepped off the stage with slow, tired movements. Ahead, the old metal tin for the collection reflected a small bit of light. Ember walked to it and looked inside. The light showed almost nothing: one old 9 bullet, a small piece of hard bread, and a single sugar cube. A heavy wave of tiredness hit her. This is not enough. Not enough at all. A deep loneliness filled her chest, cold and steady, reminding her that no one here saw the strength and life she had just given them. The saloon was quieter now. The last sounds of the evening still hung in the warm, smoky air. Ember walked slowly toward Ratty, holding the small tin with the night's earnings. Her hands shook a little, her legs hurt after every jump and twist, and her shoulders were heavy with exhaustion. She kept her eyes on the floor. Ratty's sharp voice broke the silence. "Hey, look at this," she said, leaning back in her chair. Ember set the tin on the table, but Ratty grabbed it at once. Her fingers were cold and quick as she lifted the bullet, the hard piece of bread, and the tiny sugar cube. She turned them in her hand with hungry interest. Ember's chest tightened. Her shoulders dropped under the mix of shame and tiredness. "They're not really looking at me. They only care about what I brought in or didn't bring." She swallowed and tried to steady her hands. "Here," Ember said quietly. "This is what we made tonight. I thought maybe we could split it fairly." "Fairly?" Ratty lifted one eyebrow and leaned forward to study the tin again. Her eyes shone with irritation and hunger. "Do you call this fair?" She held up the bullet, rolled it between her fingers, then touched the bread and sugar cube. "I'm taking the bullet. It's mine. I earned it." Ember shook her head, her knees weak. "Ratty, please, I just want what's fair. We both worked. I danced as hard as I could. Your best." Ratty snapped. She hit the table with her hand, making Ember jump. "Your best was nothing. And you could have danced better. You know that. I'm taking this." She pointed at Ember with a long, thin finger. Ember's arms hung at her sides. Her muscles were sore, every joint hurting. She stayed quiet. She could read the greed in Ratty's face. She knew shouting back wouldn't help. She had to stay calm, even with the pain in her body and the shame burning inside her. Footsteps came closer, heavy, slow, with a metal sound on the floorboards. Carlos stepped into the light. He was short and solid, with arms covered in grease. He didn't smile. He didn't even look at Ratty. "All of it," Carlos said, voice rough. He grabbed the tin from Ratty and poured everything into his large, calloused hands. Ember froze. Her chest tightened again, her legs shaking. The bullet, the bread, the sugar cube gone. "Wait," Ember said, but Carlos didn't stop. He tossed the piece of bread back at her. It hit the table with a dull sound. Ember picked it up, her arms aching. "You didn't even earn this much," he said, his voice short and cold. His eyes were hard, leaving no room for argument. Ember felt the greed in him, and her stomach twisted. Ratty leaned back in her chair, smirking, her fingers touching the empty tin. Ember felt a sharp sting of shame and helplessness. Her fingers twitched at her sides. The warm, smoky air seemed to press in on her, thick with tension and tiredness. She looked at the black, hard bread, the last thing left from their work, and thought about the next days. Rent, water, 3 days to pay. 3 days to survive. Her legs trembled as she shifted her weight. She pressed the bread against the table, feeling its solid surface under her hand, her muscles still aching from the dance. Ember exhaled slowly, her lips tight. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just stared at the piece of bread, feeling the pain in her body and thinking about how she would make it through. The saloon still smelled of smoke, sweat, and the faint smell of spilled alcohol. Ember sat on the edge of a wooden bench. Her muscles still hurt from the stage, and her fingers brushed the hard, baked goods on the table. Her arms shook slightly, and each breath felt heavy in her chest. A shadow fell across her. A rough hand rested lightly on her shoulder. Ember flinched but did not move away. She lifted her head and saw old Zed leaning on his stick. His body had scars and he walked with a stiff leg. His eyes were cloudy but sharp. "If you show too much of what you have, people start to take it for granted," he said, his voice rough and calm. "Clothes, pride, food, sometimes it is better to keep some things hidden, even when life is very hard." Ember's hands went to her clothes. She dressed slowly, moving carefully, each motion deliberate. Her muscles were sore, her shoulders stiff, and her knees weak. Zed watched quietly, tapping his stick on the floor and looking around the room. "You didn't get worse," he said after a pause. "Life just gave you a lot at once. Nothing personal. Crops failed, greenhouses froze or flooded, pumps broke, no spares, of course. Someone has to go and fix them. Do you think it is fun running through places where the dead wait? Raiders won't wait politely either. Caravans didn't come, and nobody knows when the next one will arrive." Ember's fingers tightened around the hem of her shirt. Her jaw pressed hard. Her muscles twitched from fatigue, but she stayed quiet, listening. Every word from Zed showed her the world clearly. There was danger, lack of food and water, and hard work ahead. She shifted slightly on the bench, her legs trembling and her heart tightening. Zed tapped his stick again. "I've seen the world change a lot, girl. People fall and rise, food spoils, water runs out. You are not weak because the weight is heavy. Life is just hard." Ember exhaled slowly. Her chest loosened a little. Her body still ached, but his words stayed in her mind. She felt a small hope forming. Zed leaned closer, his eyes narrowing slightly. "But there is a way. Quiet, safe, and profitable. Nobody else can know." He tapped his stick lightly on the floor. "Do you understand?" Ember looked up at him. For the first time in hours, her eyes were clear. "I understand," she said softly, her voice tight but steady. Zed nodded, rubbing his scarred hand across his face. "Good. You will need to go into the wasteland. Get something quick, simple, and profitable. And don't tell anyone about it." Her shoulders stiffened. She pressed her palms into her knees. I am not a scout. Not a fighter. Not a shooter. I don't know the wasteland. I could die on the first day." Her voice shook slightly, showing the fear in every aching muscle. "It is better I find work here. Something, anything I can manage." Zed shrugged, leaning heavily on his stick and tapping it once. "Suit yourself. Look around. See what you can find. If nothing works, come find me. I will be here." Ember exhaled slowly. Her shoulders relaxed a little. Her arms, still sore, hung loosely by her sides. She traced the bread with her fingers again. Her muscles still ached from the dance, but her mind began thinking about what to do next. The tiniest spark of hope warmed her chest, a small thread of direction among exhaustion and fear. Zed shuffled away, his stick tapping on the floor with measured steps. Ember stayed seated, letting the noise fade. Her body ached, every joint stiff, but her eyes were already looking forward, searching for a path that might take her somewhere safer, somewhere she could survive.